Are you ready to become awesomer? Hello, everyone. My name is Umar Hamid. I'm your host on the No Limit Selling podcast, where industry leaders share their tips, strategy, and advice on how you can become better, stronger, faster. Just before we get started, I've got a question for you. Do you have a negative voice inside your head? We all do, right? I'm going to help you remove that voice in under 30 days guaranteed. Not only remove it, but transform it. So instead of the voice that sabotages you, there's one that propels you to much higher levels of performance and success. There's a link in the show notes. Click on it to find out more. All right, let's get started. Hey everyone, today super excited. We've got Andy Miller here. He is an expert in sales. And more important than that, Andy has written a book that is like the answer to a prayer of anybody hiring salespeople, because it's so difficult to do. The science of hiring quota busting sales teams, that's like nirvana. What do you want for Christmas? Not my two front teeth. I want a sales team that performs. Hey, Andy, welcome to the program.
Hey, Umar, thank you for having me.
So one of the phrases I've heard about salespeople, me included, is they're good BSers, which is like, one of those myths. And it's true because way too often people hire people that sound really good on the interview, and resumes are like basically the best fiction ever written. And so they end up hiring the wrong person. A, why is that? And B, how can we remedy that?
Why is that? Oh, there's a lot of answers to that. Why do we end up hiring the wrong person? Well, let's start with the salesperson first, and then we'll talk about the company second. So first thing is, salespeople, they're people, right? They know how to schmooze, they know how to talk, and most companies make the mistake of hiring people that they like. And so
human nature.
Yeah, it is human nature. And if you look at the whole interview process, let me frame this for a second. So this book was written on 2 years of research along with an organizational psychologist, because I asked her the question. It took me a year to find an organizational psychologist who understood assessments and the application to hiring. I talked to a lot of people, took a long time to find her. Ironic thing is she was just a couple miles from my house. I searched all over the country and here she was 5 minutes from my house. So like, wow, what are the odds of that? But salespeople are good at selling themselves. And there's lots of bias built into the hiring process. Mm-hmm. So we start with a phone interview nowadays a video interview. Well, the research shows
Zoom, definitely.
Yeah. Most people make up their mind in the first 5 minutes whether they like the person or not. If they like them, they ask the easy questions. If they don't like them, they ask the hard questions. Why? Because in the easy questions, they can advance them to the next step. With the hard questions, they can disqualify them. So companies have a lot of bias in their process. They do not have a structured interview, meaning structured interview is each person who's interviewing a candidate. Let's say you have the recruiter, you have a subject matter expert, and you have the hiring sales manager. Each one of them should have their own set of questions that they ask. They ask the same questions to each candidate, but they also have defined what's a good answer, what's an average answer, what's a poor answer, along with a scorecard. So they're taking bias out of the process. Now, the research, like I said, mentions in the first 5 minutes, they determine whether they like the person or not. And like isn't just on personality. Do I like the way they look, the length of their hair, are they wearing the right baseball cap on the interview like you are? So that's what they're looking at. And because they don't have defined questions with defined answers in a scorecard, it's all based upon gut.
And I think part of the reason is we think we are better at certain things than we actually are.
Yes.
And so I don't need to prepare, Andy. Do you want me to prepare, or do you want me to find you a good candidate? Or whatever that version is in the sales world. Do you want me to fiddle around with a CRM or do you want me to sell? Like, well, what do you want, Andy? It's like, which of
Yeah.
course is not either or.
Yeah. And most companies don't use assessments. And if they use an assessment, they use the wrong one. Like the one I hear about all the time is, oh, we use DISC. Well, even DISC says, do not use this for hiring. It's not meant, the tool was not designed that way. So it's an abuse of the tool. And then they end up not getting what they thought they were getting because their process is all wrong. Now, the flip side of that is the companies misrepresent themselves.
The company's
And
meaning?
the company that's hiring misrepresents themselves. They tell you that they're number one in the market and they're not. Or they tell you they got a great product, but the product hasn't even gone through beta yet. Or the job description is wrong. Yeah. Listen, I don't think they intentionally misrepresent. I think it's more out of being naive. But I'll give you an example. I had a sister. She's always been in management in clothing and shoes and things like that, right? So she sees an ad, responds to it. It's about a management position, has multiple interviews, all discussion around management position, gets hired and discovered it's a clerk position, mostly responsible for stocking the shelves.
Wow.
And you would be surprised how many times I hear salespeople say, that just happened to me. I go, what do you mean? They said they had a product, but it's not even out of beta. They said they are number one in the market, and I've discovered that people in the market don't even know who they are. They, the man, there was supposed to be training. They have no training. It was one day on how to do order entry. So, you got a problem. It's one side of the equation is, hey, what happened to that person that I interviewed and who showed up? And the other side of the equation is, hey, what happened to that company you told me about? Because what I'm walking into is nothing like what you described.
All right, so let's kind of back this up a little bit
Yeah.
and break this down because a lot of information there. So if let's say we are, we'll pick two examples. One is we are a company that sells cars,
Okay.
local Ford dealership. If you were the manager, how would you craft a good description for that job? Like my initial gut feel would be is to rather than thinking about what my salespeople do is maybe talk to a couple of salespeople that work for me and figure out what they actually do. Like, how would you craft a description of that job? Would you talk to the salespeople? How do you get something accurate where the idea of a job description is that you find the right candidate for your company as opposed to trying to sucker somebody in to join you. So how do you craft a good description so you find the people that you want as opposed to everybody applying or the wrong people applying?
So I would look at your newest hires that are being successful. You would think, hey, we'll go look at the most successful reps. Well, what if you had a rep that's been there for 15 years and he or she is just living off of referrals? And a new hire isn't going to live off referrals. They've got to shake the trees, beat the bushes, make a lot of phone calls. So I would look at who are your newest hires who have been successful in performing at or above where you expected. And so then I'd take, 3 or 4 of those folks and I'd look at what are they doing. Then I would do my job description. But if you ever notice when you look at a job description, it has this long list of, must be able to do this and this and this and this and this and this. And it's a long laundry list. But never do they say these 4 things are 80% of the job and the rest is 20% of the job. They lose the message in their description.
So why do you think people do that? Like, don't do the common sense thing. It's like, hey, 90% of your job is getting first appointments. If you're getting first appointments, we'll show you how to close them. But if you're not getting those, the rest of it, who cares? Like, why do people not?
The rest is noise, right? I mean, does it say must be proficient on a computer? Okay, bring them in for the interview and go, hey, I've got you logged in. Go to the database, look up Umar, and tell me his phone number. Or send me an email after the interview with your thoughts of, what was it like. That way I can see, can they write? Can they use email? Can they do it in a timely fashion? So there's lots of ways you can put little tests in there, but why they don't do it, I have no clue, because I haven't seen job descriptions that say these 4 things are 80% of the job.
So I think here's why it is. For example, let's say, so I'll give you a data point and then I'll come back to, or an anecdote and I'll come back to this, is that if you have someone that's with their family, people they love, they trust, and the closest bonds, oftentimes they don't have the social filters that they need. And sometimes they're abrupt and rude. And they're not doing it to be mean, is because all the filters get removed and you're yourself with that person. But when you go out into public, you have these social filters come in and there's a different version of you shows up. And I think equating that to, I'm writing a job description, so it has to be like this, like all job descriptions are, as opposed to, how do I write a description that gets me the best candidate for my job, is a different filter. And I think we go into, this is the way it's supposed to be, and we just go down that path, and it makes perfect sense in that filter, as opposed to, how do I get the best candidate that is going to beat the crap out of the competition?
Yeah, I don't think people have, outside of HR, I'm not even sure about them, nobody showed them how to compose a job description. Nobody showed them how to do an effective ad. I look at somebody's ad and they'll go, yeah, my ad's not pulling. And I look at it and go, there's nothing in there unique. And I say, you're writing a dating ad. If you read this ad, would you respond to this? You're not telling me anything exciting or unique or enticing. It's just a list. And so what do most people do? They don't know how to write, so they go to the internet and they search job description or hiring ad. They take it, they copy it, and then they tweak it a little bit and go, okay, there it is. No wonder we get the wrong people.
So hold on for a second. We're going to go to one of our sponsors. It's called Mindset Boosters, and it's going to change your life. If you're ready to let go of anxiety, let go of uncertainty, let go of doubt, Mindset Boosters gives you the ability to decide how you act and feel in any situation. Ready to take charge of your mindset? Go to mindsetboosters.com. So if we get the right description, we start getting the right people applying. What's the process that we need to use to ensure, because it's such a time-consuming effort. It's like resumes come in, somebody's got to review them, and then after they review them, there's a first interview and maybe a second interview, then bring them in, and it's a major effort that could take a ton of hours. If you take a look at the VP of sales, the director of sales, the other people, HR manager, their hourly rate, it's $10,000 just in time alone to vet a candidate that doesn't fit your requirements. So how would you recommend, if we get the right ad, then what?
I'm going to do a step before that.
Good.
Everybody says they want to hire A players. Everybody says that. And then my question is, are you an A player company? So the fastest way to figure that out is go to their Glassdoor rating, because 50% of all candidates go look at your Glassdoor rating before they respond. Now, most people will say, I ignore Glassdoor because that's where the disgruntled go. Yes, there's probably truth to that, but it's also where your candidates go. So the best companies to work for. So you know how most metropolitan areas have like a business journal, and the business journal will say, hey, the
50 best companies, that kind of stuff.
Exactly. So the best companies to work for have a 4.0 or above rating on Glassdoor. If you're not at 4.0, you're not getting A players.
So what's the highest level? I'm not sure. Like 4.0, what's the maximum? 5?
They go up to 5.
Okay.
So, if you're between 4 and 5, you're going to attract A players. If you're 3.2 to 3.9, you're asking for B players. If you're below 3.2, you're asking for C players. So your Glassdoor rating may not reflect who you truly are,
But
but
it counts.
if you chose to ignore it, that's what you're getting. And I learned this from a kid in the gym because I, befriended him. Hey, how's your job search going? He goes, yeah, this company called me and I didn't even respond because I went and looked at their Glassdoor rating and it was terrible. Why would I want to even respond to them? Out of the mouths of babes, right? So
Definitely.
there's this young guy and he's going, okay, so that's the first thing.
So let me interject there before we go to the next thing. You've heard of the book and the movie Moneyball?
Yeah, this is Moneyball.
So the question is this: your best guess, Andy, how many B players have the potential to become A players? Is it a half, a quarter, less, more?
I have no idea. I mean, I've got the data analytics on 3.2 million salespeople. Sorry, 2.3 million salespeople. Has the potential.
So here's my hypothesis, and there's not enough data to support it.
Okay.
My hypothesis, well, let's take a look at the sales process. Let's say plus or minus, it's landing the appointment, doing the presentation, handling the objections, closing, and then getting referrals or going deeper into the account. Let's say that was the sales process. If a salesperson has a weakness in any one of those areas, that it has a dramatic impact on their sales results. And so if we could repair that thing, let's say they were like closing at a good rate, but not a great rate. Like that could be a skill that we could teach them to do better. If they did 20% better, it would add a significant amount of income to the organization. So looking at it that way, my guess is that maybe 30% of B players have one of those fixable things with the right sales manager or coach could tweak that little thing and get them to actually perform at a higher level. They're already doing a good job. They're going to hit their quota, fix that thing, and they're going to do way better. Or I could be just, drinking the Kool-Aid, my own Kool-Aid.
Yeah, I disagree. Here's why I disagree. Because you just described a process and a skill set, but there's two more major buckets that contribute to that. Do they want to learn and get better?
A huge one, absolutely.
That's a huge one, right? And the second one is, what are their belief systems, which really kind of plugs into your sponsor that you just ran a little bit ago of, what are their beliefs? And I'll give you an example. So years ago, I went to buy a Honda Goldwing motorcycle. Walked into the store, I had the money in my pocket, knew what I wanted. Sales rep meets me at the door and says, "Can I help you?" And I give him a subtle buying signal. I go, "Yes, I'd like to buy a Goldwing." So that's my subtle hint.
Yeah.
And he says, "Okay." And he walks me over and gives me a demo. I didn't ask for a demo. He spent a half hour giving me a demo. Now, as a sales consultant, I thought, well, let's just see how this plays out. Gives me a half hour demo. Then at the end of the demo, because his belief was he was selling to me the way he personally would have shopped.
Yep.
So he gives me a demo. He projected his beliefs onto me. Now that's the first belief. His second belief he projected onto me was, he says at the end, "You know what, Andy, this is a lot of money." That was his belief. I had the cash in my pocket. Then third belief he projects onto me is he says, "You probably want to go home and think it over." And I said, "You're right." And I left. Had he, when I walked in the door, and by the way, that would have been a third of his quota for that month. Had he said, "Okay, I hear you. You want to buy a Goldwing. Guide me on what you'd like to do next." I would say, "Let's pick out the color, the accessories. I'll pay for it. Let's do the paperwork. I'll pay for it. And can I be out of here in 30 minutes?" Would have been the fastest sale he ever made. So yes, there's process and there's the skills in the process, but there's also how hungry are you to be successful?
Absolutely.
And there's the head, what's going on between your ears because
and,
that's
and
the
yet,
piece that will screw them up the most.
so here's my formula for that. It's like skill set times
Mhm.
mindset equals results. And if you
Mhm.
got a poor skill set and poor mindset, go do something else. If you've got a really good skill set and a weak mindset, you're going to do okay. If you got a really good mindset and a weak skill set, you're going to do okay. But if you got a great skill set and a great mindset, you're going to like be an A player and just kill it. And so, and part of that is, do you want to learn his mindset? And then also, whatever the blocks are to get them out of the way. All right, so let's go back to the process. We've got a really good ad that is going to attract the right people. Resumes start coming in. What's a process people should follow in order to find a quota busting salesperson that's going
Well,
to enhance the team?
so the next step in my process is that it depends on what the market conditions are. If there's lots of candidates and not too many jobs, my next step would be to send them an assessment to take. If there's
OMG, which
Yeah,
assessment would you send them to?
yes, OMG. Uh, and if there not too many candidates and lots of jobs, then I'm probably going to need to do a short interview to get them engaged. Now, here's the problem. They will most likely do a short video interview, and now the bias starts to kick in. They don't like the way they look. They don't like the way they dress. They don't like the way they sound. They don't like what they have in the background. They don't, and something then turns them off. So it's like, you know what? Don't do a video interview, or do a video interview, but everybody then gets the assessment, because you can't trust your gut in a 5-minute interview. So then assess them and let the assessment guide you, because when you look at the selection methods that companies use and what's most predictive or accurate in predicting success, uh, culture index, culture type indexes are about 13%, resumes are about 18,
Hmm.
personality assessments are about 20, normal interviews where they just ask some questions but it's not structured is about 21%. And then if you look at the assessment that I use, that's 91%. So that's 3 to 4 times more predictive than anything else they're using. So do you want to spend hours at, multiple interviews with somebody only to get to the end and find out they're not a fit? Or would you rather find that out up front, and if they fit your criteria, then run them through your interview process? Because now you're only interviewing people who can do the job. Whether you like them or not, whether the chemistry is there, that's for you to determine. But I call it's the eHarmony approach or the Moneyball approach to hiring.
Yeah, absolutely. It makes perfect sense. And one of the things that, so of course I was playing around with the OMG, like, oh my God, but OMG is the assessment you like.
Yes.
And the thing I liked about it most, and let me just, I'm going to cough here for a second. One of the things I like about it most is that it looks at the beliefs of the salesperson as well. So one of the things, if I remember correctly, is that if you have a salesperson that thinks $500 is a lot of money, they're going to be predisposed to cave in on price or offer discounts just right out of the get-go. And so looking at the beliefs of the salesperson and developing this assessment, and then after doing 2.3 million of these assessments, that it's been refined. And I think there's a level of certainty. If the assessment green lights a candidate, what is the likelihood of that candidate being at the top 50% of your sales force within 6 months? Do you remember what that is, Andy?
Yeah, it was 92% will be in the top half within 12 months.
And do you happen to know what the average is when people are just hiring? What percentage of salespeople actually make it to the top 50% without using the assessment?
Oh, I don't know the answer to that, but yeah, I remember one client saying, "Oh, it'll take years to get them there," and they got there in like 4 months.
Brilliant, because I know there's another data point for this, which is if the assessment says don't hire Andy Miller, and you're like, but I like Andy, he's such a good guy, and he's worked for these companies, I want to hire him. What's the likelihood of you failing and not being with the company if I hire you against the assessment?
Yeah. So that one is 75% will fail within the first 6 months. I call it the puppy love factor.
Yeah. And you doggedly believe that.
Absolutely.
All right. So
And that's not belief. That's what the
that's
data
data.
shows. Yeah.
Absolutely. So where do companies go wrong when they bring a salesperson on board? There's two types of salespeople, I guess. One category would be they're not familiar with the industry, but they're really good salespeople, not that familiar with what we're doing. And then there's another group of people that are in our industry and they've joined our company. Let's take that person first. What's the best way to help them be successful when you bring them on board? Like, what should we be doing with these talented people that come on board that gives them an unfair advantage to be successful? Because I think a lot of times companies set this up that it's difficult for salespeople to be successful because of just the processes that they have in place that aren't well thought out.
Yeah. So if you want to take the example of they're within the industry and they're just
Yes,
switching
let's do that one
companies.
first, and we'll do the other one second.
Okay. So if they're in the industry and they're just switching companies, yeah, the mistake is not giving them enough time and energy. I mean, think about it. We'll take professional football players or basketball players as an example. When somebody's traded from one team to another, men or women's sports, what's the first thing they have to learn? They have to learn the playbook.
Yeah.
They don't say, hey, you played for the other team. Come on. We don't need to give you anything. Let's just get you out there on the court. What do? They got to learn the playbook, and they go through skills and drills and lots of practices before game day. And they do that, by the way, year after year after year. So in sales, they don't do that. They go, oh, you used to work for our competitor. You're here now. You know how this stuff works. They give them a 3-day orientation, and then they throw them out there on their own. Onboarding, the best onboarding is somewhere between 3 to 12 months long. And in the 80s, if you wanted to be a professional salesperson, you went to work for IBM, HP, Xerox, Control Data, and they all had a year and a half long training, mentor, apprentice program. And that's what they ran you through. Now, yes, you would go out, you'd have some accounts, you'd do some sales, but there were layers or levels to their training, and you never got to go out on your own until you'd proven, after a year and a half, that you could do it on your own. And that's the mistake we make today. We think they're bringing it with them, and they are bringing industry knowledge and certain skill set, but they're not bringing it. They're not bringing our culture, our way of doing things. I've seen too many sales reps jump from one company to another in the same industry. They were successful at the one, and they crashed and burned at the other. Why? Selling the same software to the same people, doing the same things, and they crashed and burned. You would think there's no reason for that. There's lots of reasons for that. Different sales process, different type of manager, different type of culture, lots of reasons.
Absolutely. How about a sales rep that's a good sales rep in one industry, they're coming into another? Is the same level of training, a 6-month program, or is it a different training?
No.
Certainly they need product knowledge and all that stuff, which would be essential.
Yeah, all the research shows successful onboarding programs are 3 to 12 months long.
So what is the job of the sales manager, do you think?
Well, too many times you'll see their player coach, which to me creates a conflict of interest. What happens when a lead comes in? Who takes that? Does the sales manager get that? So player coach is okay if it's just a temporary transition kind of move, but the role of the sales manager is really to be the coach. Their job is to grow their team, help them be stronger, leveraging the sales manager's skills and ability and experience. So to coach them, to train them, to hold them accountable, to mentor them. It's pipeline, strategize deals, debrief deals, all that stuff. But it's not for them to do direct selling.
Absolutely. So, Andy, before we part company, if you're a sales rep coming into a new company, what are the things that you need to be focused on in order to be successful?
First thing I would want to know is, even before I got hired, who are your 3 most successful people and what are they doing? That's what I want to, because I want to know, are they telling me this is an opportunity and it's a fantasy because nobody's ever been able to pull it off, or is somebody actually able to do it? And then me as a rep, I want to look at what they're doing, how they're doing it, and I want to copy that. Second thing, I want to know if they can give me, hey, what's the 90-day ramp up plan? Do you have one documented? Can I see it? Because if they say, yeah, we have it, but they can't prove it,
they don't have it.
They don't have it. It's an intention, but it's not a design.
So one of the things I'd add to that is like they got this marvelous tool you may have heard of called LinkedIn. And you can go, I'm looking for past employees of this company and talk to some past salespeople that have worked there. And, whatever they say, you can take with a grain of salt. But if you talk to 2 or 3 previous reps, you'll get a good sense of what this company is like and what it's like to work there as well. And so sometimes people are quite open to that phone call. If you call them up, say, hey, I'm thinking of joining this company. Tell me about your experience there. What do they do well? Where are the struggles? And then when you go for the interview process, you've got real questions you can ask, as opposed to just blindly going in there and hoping for the best.
Yeah, because think about every person you're going to interview with, as if you're the rep. Every person you interview with is going to put a positive spin on where the company's at.
So, Andy, before we part company, 2 things. Number 1, what is your next book? It's already released. So we were talking about the science of hiring quota busting sales teams. And you had a second book that came out recently. What's the name of that book?
That's called Shameless Self-Promotion: The Science of Closing the Sale by Winning Relationships.
Love it. And I like the covers are very similar. So it's like a X for Dummies kind of thing. It's like if you see it in the bookshelf, that's an Andy Miller book.
Yeah,
I want one of those.
Yeah, well, I want to do a series because the next one's going to be accelerating Salesforce performance.
Love that. Andy, thank you so much for being like you're a veteran in the industry. You've been doing a phenomenal job of helping companies grow their sales and a great keynote speaker. We're going to put all your contact information in the show notes. Any last words before we part company today?
No, Umar, I just appreciate the time. Thank you for the opportunity.
We're going to go to post-show in a moment, but let's do the outro. If you enjoyed this episode, please go to iTunes and leave a 5-star rating. And if you're looking for more tools, go to my website at nolimitselling.com. I've got a free mind training course there that's going to teach you some insights from the world of neuro-linguistic programming, and that is the fastest way to get better results.